I want you to think just for a moment and identify what's been the most difficult part of this whole thing for you. Just pick one thing. Maybe it's something you didn't see coming. Maybe it's something you kind of did. Maybe it's new responsibility. Maybe it's that you've had to give up other responsibilities. Maybe you've had a hard time finding things that you used to be able to find easily. Maybe it's the lack of connection with others. But what's the one thing? For the Israelites, wandering through the wilderness, obviously there are many difficult things about that. We spent the last couple of days talking about God providing manna, so finding food in the desert was going to be hard, but after God provided the manna, they also realized they needed to find something to drink. And we talked about this previously a couple of weeks ago, that there was another time where the Bible mentions that they were thirsty, but that they became thirsty again when they came to a place called Rephidim. Finding water in the desert is kind of hard. It's hard to live without water. And they became angry. They started asking, is the Lord among us or is he not? And they started taking out their frustration on the Lord and on Moses, the person who was appointed to lead them. And they got so frustrated with Moses that they picked up rocks and they were about to throw them at him. They wanted to stone him to death because they were so angry at him. They wanted things so badly to be different. And so Moses went to the Lord and he said, what am I supposed to do here? Do you know what he told him to do? To go stand in front of the people. The ones who were going to throw rocks at him. And then he told him to do something else. He told him to walk over to a rock, hit it, and water would come out. And that's a crazy enough miracle all by itself, that God would bring water from a rock. But I want to point out something that I didn't notice until just recently. Those rocks that the people were holding, they intended to do a lot of harm with them. They intended to inflict a lot of pain. And what did God use to provide for them? The things that were originally intended for a lot of pain and a lot of harm and a lot of bad things. God showed his ability there in the Old Testament to do exactly what he promised in the New Testament, in Romans chapter 8, when it says that all things work together with God for our good. All things. All things. Or it reminds me of Joseph in the Old Testament talking to his brothers when he reminded them, you remember when you sold me into slavery? That was painful, that was harmful, he said. But when he was standing in front of them almost 2 decades later, in a position where he could do anything he wanted to them, he chose to forgive them. He said, what you intended for harm, God used for good. Isn't the greatest example of all of a time when something painful was happening, a time where somebody intended pain to be inflicted, and of God using that for good? Isn't the greatest example when Jesus himself was on top of a rock? A skull-shaped mountain that they nicknamed the Rock. That was a rock. He died. They pounded nails through him. But God took that pain and he gave us heaven. He gave us a future, a great future, a perfect future that we know is coming, no matter what else happens here. God takes the most difficult parts of our lives, the things that inflict the most pain, the things that we did not want to see at all, and he works them out in a way that they don't get the best of us in the end. They don't. And if the thing about this whole situation, the thing that's been hardest, the thing that's been most painful, if it's been you, if certain character flaws have exposed themselves, if you found that you're just weak against certain temptations, you don't even need to be afraid of that. Remember, the Israelites came complaining. Does God love us? Is the Lord with us, or is he not? Ready to throw rocks at the leader that God himself had appointed. And how did God respond? The same way he always responds to us. Even in our sin, he provided for them. Just as he always provides for us. He always provides for us. With grace, with forgiveness, with food, with water, with whatever we need. With whatever we need. Rest well tonight, my friends. Whatever it is that's difficult and causing you pain, with God by your side, you do not need to be afraid of it.